Hello, everyone, and welcome to Guildmaster Gaming. Today we have Juan Herrera of Universe 25. He was the producer of this. Is a film we got a chance to see, or we got a chance. You presented it. I got a chance to see at Film Quest this past year. It's a nice little sci-fi flick, but I'm going to let Juan introduce himself and tell us about Universe 25.
Sure. Hey, Dan, thanks for having me, and hi to all the people that might be watching. My name is Juan Herrera. I'm an independent film producer based out of Los Angeles of Colombian origin. I've been doing this now for roughly about 3.5, 4 years. And the movie Universe 25 is really a psychological thought experiment interspliced with some sci-fi elements and some psychological drama, but really rooted at the base of a character-driven story. So, really, the story revolves around a young woman who is mysteriously abducted and has to kind of come to grips and terms with the reality of her situation, which she now faces in an inescapable room. And we took a lot of inspiration from, as Dan knows, a previously conducted experiment that was actually called Universe 25, which was a thought it was an experiment that was aimed to shed light on what would happen in a quote unquote utopia starring a bunch of rats. And so if you gave the rats, unlimited bedding, free of predators and any sort of environmental dangers, and you created a utopia for them, what would happen? And it was meant to resemble what would happen to our society if we also were given the same sort of benefits. So that was really the genesis, mainly for the title, but also for our direction in pushing the story forward.
Okay, so you already gave us the inspiration of it. So, but I want to let people know my background in sociology. This is something I study because it was shortly after this study came out that I was going to college. Uh, as I date myself, it was considered quite an impactful and in some ways a horrendous experiment. If you ever see some of the work that's come out of it, and you're saying that that was kind of the inspiration mostly for the title, but you kind of took a different twist with
Mhm.
the story, and you didn't take the total horrendous that was going on with the rats, but more the psychological thriller with. Can you tell us what some of the things that maybe, I know you're the producer, but maybe some of the things that you guys worked with to kind of play up that idea of playing off the psychological?
Yeah, well, it was also heavily inspired by films like The Platform. I don't know if you remember that movie where like these prisoners basically fall asleep and then every day or so a platform comes down with food and then they eat whatever's left on that platform from the previous levels that it's already gone through and then they wake up the next day and they're on a different level of that same chain. And so it kind of like shows what do people do in different circumstances based on just, what's available to them. And so that in combination with different philosophical ideas that we were playing around with of, at the time that this was written by Kelly, who's the lead writer, and David, who was also one of the co-writers and director, they were in the middle of the pandemic. And so, as the world knew, we were all kind of confined, quote unquote, for 2 weeks, but turned out to be much longer than that, to these very small environments, sometimes with only one other person. And so that became the genesis of like the exploration of, okay, well, if the one other person that you were locked in a room with wasn't necessarily your sibling, but a complete stranger, and every 30 days that stranger changed, what would that look like? What would that feel like? And you knowing that you can't get out of this, that it's kind of like a perpetual limbo that you're stuck in, how do you make peace with that? How do you cope with that? And what would that look like, right? And so, you know, a big thing that we tried to explore were a lot of philosophical understandings from all ranges, right? From the Stoic philosophy of Marcus Aurelius to the Zen philosophy of the Tao and all of those intermediates of how do human beings deal with just horrific circumstances like Viktor Frankl and his work that the title's kind of escaping me right now. Um, Man's Search for Meaning. But in that book, it is heavily discussed that the last of the human freedoms that you have is how you choose to respond to your circumstances. And so that was something that we wanted to eventually get to with the film, um, to basically create a piece of work that acted as a reflective mirror to the audience member watching it and to their particular life experience and even present circumstance as they watched it. So one of the beautiful things that has come out of this whole experience is getting to talk to people and hearing their interpretations of the film, hearing what they thought happened at the end, because it really just reflected back to me where they are in their journey. And that was exactly what we were trying to go for.
So now I actually took over my later questions of what you want the audience to take away. Uh,
Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself.
no, that's great though. I mean, because it was a great explanation of just where that genesis of the story came from, what you're searching for. But
Mhm.
let's kind of talk about you, Juan. You're the producer of the film, so you have probably some input in all this, but not a lot. But when you saw what Dave and Kelly kind of put together for
Mhm.
this, what was your personal draw to make this film?
Well, several. I mean, one, love both Dave and Kelly. I was still in film school when they brought this to my attention, and so I thought, man, what a great breakout film right out of film school to produce some weird kind of mumblecore, high concept short that like I'd never seen anything like it before, and I wanted to definitely have my hand in being able to help bring that vision to life. And two, just a lot of the philosophical implications really attracted me. I think that as a producer, that is something that I'm always trying to attach myself to or help bring to light, because it's a subject matter that I feel very passionate about, that I study every day. I try my best to live by a lot of these principles myself and conduct my business in that manner. And so being able to give voice to a lot of these high concept ideas is challenging, but you know, for me, that's the whole reason why I got into this business, because it's challenging and it allows you the opportunity to possibly create something that can have a long-lasting impact, similar to like, the movie The Matrix, right? Like The Matrix was so high concept for the time. And who, they probably didn't know, but when I watched it in high school, changed my whole world. I was like, whoa, what am I looking at here? And I wanted to one day be able to do that for other people. So that was definitely like I saw that as like, okay, this is a good stepping stone to get my feet in the water, to figure out a lot of stuff that film school definitely didn't teach me, and then just progress in that direction and kind of create a niche for myself where I'm known as one of those producers that likes working on really difficult high concept stuff.
So you're saying it was a really difficult high concept stuff. So I have a feeling that when you went in production, there was probably a few issues or struggles that you went through.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, there was a lot of we breaking down the script with Dave definitely was a process because there was a lot of nuance in the script that we needed to come up with creative solutions on how to communicate that imagery, different tones that we wanted to communicate, and also just trying to blend the sci-fi genre with the sort of psychological thriller genre, right? And so being able to do that in a way that doesn't come off as preachy or like, oh, this is our, agenda and here's our agenda. Like I didn't want to do something like that. So some of the stuff that we were talking about, because it was on this kind of higher philosophical terminology or form of communication, we wanted to try to communicate that stuff without saying it, just through what was happening in the movie, character choices, and that sort of stuff. So really deliberating on how that was going to come about was a challenge. And then obviously a couple of scenes that were on the sort of actiony, violent spectrum, figuring out how to navigate that in a way that didn't again come off as super cheesy or like badly done. That was something that we just needed to practice and have many meetings where we talked through the coordination of those things with the time that we were given.
I think another challenge from what I saw in the film was you had a very limited set space.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
basically had one, well, two rooms because you had the main room and a bathroom. That was like, that
yeah.
was it.
Yeah, it was pretty self-contained and actually crazy story. So, okay. So the day before production, I was in a backyard assembling most of the furniture that we were going to use on that set, like just 12 hours prior in like 109 degrees, getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, and packing it all into this grip truck that we were going to drive to the set the next day. And when we get there for the build day, a couple of people that I had sort of, hired, I guess hired or asked if they wanted to be a part of it from my film school, ended up bailing at the last minute. And so a lot of the build fell on the art director and myself, and even Dave, the director. I mean, there was a point where Dave was literally on the floor screwing in the screws for the IKEA beds that we had purchased for the room. But putting that all together in one day really was just a group team effort of everybody knowing what needed to be done, the gaffers knowing where lights needed to be installed, and then everybody just going on their own and trusting that people would do the job correctly. So that whole process definitely was pretty challenging to create the self-contained environment. And then on top of that, actually a month prior, we had already built the flats. But then Dave, he was on another production and he ended up catching COVID. And he gives me a call as I'm driving back from Comic-Con. And he's like, dude, I got COVID. I don't know what we're gonna do. We got to push the shoot back. And we were gonna lose a ton of the money that we had already paid the builders to actually make this set because we needed to push it for a whole other month in order to give time for, the COVID compliance sort of rules that we had to operate by in Los Angeles. So that whole set really was like a miracle that we were able to get it built, get it rebuilt, and then actually shoot on it. And then on top of that, on day two of production, a heat wave exploded a generator that was powering about 7 blocks of the area we were in, which included our studio. And so, like in the middle of one of the takes, all the lights in the studio just go out. And we're all like, and I'm in the DIT room looking at the dailies going, holy hell, what's happening? And I run out and I just see people with phone flashlights unplugging stuff and going crazy. And I'm like, holy shit, man, this whole thing's on fire. So it was definitely a challenge.
That seems like there was also some really good things that came out of it. Um, Dave and Kelly weren't able to join us today, but I had a chance of talking to them at the festival at FilmQuest.
Mhm,
And Kelly was pretty excited, like about the whole setup with the fly, and especially the scene that takes place in the bathroom
mhm,
corresponding to that. And I got a chance to talk to her about it.
mhm,
But
mhm.
how about for you? Was there any particular scene, like you're saying, you're going through the dailies and seeing something that when you saw it, you just went, "That is great."
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I would say that a scene that really stood out to me was that the scene where Kelly's character Mel, when she is actually, yeah, when she's sort of looking at the fly and going through that moment of realizing the full circle of her situation, like, I don't know if you catch it in the movie, but the fly was a huge motif that we wanted to use, right? We have our opening shot. It's like a fly on thing, and then right before she's taken, you see a fly pass her head, and she kind of like swats it away in annoyance, as we all do. But then as her situation progresses, this fly that they've captured in this jar becomes literally the only symbol of the outside world and of what the outside world used to remind her of. And so now she's looking at a fly who's in a jar while she's in a jar, quote unquote, the room. And it's like this super meta moment of realizing that she is that fly. And the emotional connection that was created in attachment to that. So watching that even in the daily, like her performance on it was so subtle, but like she was so in that moment that it made me realize on a deeper level what we were doing. You know, sometimes these stories write themselves as you're making them. And so we hadn't even really thought all the way through what that was going to imply until I saw it on camera and I'm like, "Oh my God, dude, like this whole thing is about like literally the cyclical nature of the situation she finds herself in. So that to me, that was a scene that really, really just let me know like, okay, we are communicating the nuance of these ideas in a very profound way that maybe might not come to you at first glance, but with like a lot of great films, you know, on the rewatches is when people start to really have these thoughts. And again, a lot of the thoughts don't come until you as a person have changed, and then you revisit the story or revisit the material. And I felt like, okay, this is going to be one of those things that, you know, could be a cult classic in 10 years or so, you know, as a short film. So yeah, that was definitely one of the scenes that stood out to me. Oh, that and the the boner shot. The boner shot, you know, it's like I couldn't I couldn't not like be like, okay, like I'm glad we got this in there just because it, you know, it provides some comic relief a little bit, but also it's a little ridiculous and I kind of like that. So
You know, the subtlety of what you're talking about with the meta and
hmm
the philosophical side. S- I have friends and myself, we are really into the philosophical sci-fi films,
yeah.
that are out there. And when I started mentioning this to one of my friends, he was, "Oh, I gotta see it. I gotta see it," because of the layering that you guys did, and was like you said, it was done very well, very subtly, and very nicely done. Now, so you get this film made, and you've got it out on the festival circuit.
Mhm.
Whereabouts in the circuit are you right now? So, like, if people were kind of looking ahead to see for where they could watch this, do you
Mhm.
have some dates coming up that you can tell us about? Are you have you are waiting for feedback, or are you moving on to the next part of the whole process?
Sure. Well, we are sort of just nearing the end of our festival circuit here. I know that we just recently got accepted into festival in San Francisco. It might have been like the San Francisco sci-fi or something like that. I don't remember exactly when the dates on that might be, but we are nearing pretty much the end, and we are looking. We have like two deals on the table for distribution for the short, and so we're just kind of as a team going through like, does this make sense? And do we want to put it on this platform? How are we going to be able to get the most eyes on it? But definitely within the next, I would say, month, we're going to make it available for the public to view. And, you know, they can always go on level11films.com and shoot us an email. And, you know, we'll be able to respond to it with anybody really, really who wants to see it. You know, we'd be more than happy to share a link to the film and people can get to watch it in that way as well.
So specifically with Film Quest, you were
Mhm.
nominated, I believe, for five different categories. Uh,
Yeah.
it's usually for short films with the numbers of them. That's pretty amazing.
Oh, thank
And
you.
and you
Yeah,
guys won best sci-fi short.
we did. Yeah.
So when you heard about that, what was your reaction to that?
Oh man, one of my close friends, Sterling, was actually in the room because I was sitting. Dave and Kelly were actually there at the venue, and I was in that sort of green room that had been set up, and I was
Thank
just
you.
watching it. And the second, like the eyeball, like Kelly's eyeball came up on the screen, I know that shot from a mile away. I was just like, let's go," because like you know we had already gone through like most of the categories and you know we didn't have any wins and stuff like that and I was like, man, I really want just one out of Film Quest. You know, obviously you can't dictate those sort of things, but it'd be nice. And when we found out, it just felt like a really well sort of well-earned attaboy, you know, because we had been there for 11 days. I mean, Utah's not exactly the warmest place. But it was a lot of fun to be able to share that moment and those experiences with the rest of the team and to be able to, you know, share the space with so many talented creatives who also were up there being recognized. It really felt like we were on the right track with what we were doing because in the beginning of the festival, it was just a lot of rejection letters. Um, and so we were like, man, I don't know if we made a film that people are going to get or understand or even like. And so to see that we kind of found our community and found our niche audience, it was just a great feeling, you know. And yeah, I just couldn't be more proud of the team and just also how they handled being able to be in that place, right? Because again, one of the things that we always circle back to is, you know, we don't want to just make films to talk about these ideas, but like as filmmakers ourselves, we want to make sure that we embody these principles and these ideas to the best of our ability because it just it further enhances our work, right? So it's like if you know your response, whether you win or lose, should be exactly the same. Um, and that's something that I think we try to strive for.
I'll admit, I was kind of setting you up there because I was in the room and I saw your reaction.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. No, I was Yeah, I mean, you saw, I was stoked that like there was a small burst of energy and then I'm like, okay, okay, all right, hold it, reel it in, you know. But it was cool. It was really
Yeah,
cool.
anytime somebody won that was in our auxiliary room there, yeah, there was a quite a punch of energy there.
Hmm.
So yeah, congratulations on
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So now you're telling me
Thank
that
you
you're
very
coming to the end of your festival run and where they might be able to
Yeah.
see it. But now I always ask people this, this is quite a neat little short and it does hint at a larger story. Is there any possibility of
Mhm.
this going into a full-on feature?
Um, Yes. Yeah, we are a feature is being developed right now. They're sort of, you know, putting the kind of finishing touches, bells and whistles on the script and, you know, they've gone through a couple of different drafts now. And myself on my end, I'm definitely already starting to put the different, you know, players that we're going to probably need and putting my list together of phone calls that I'm gonna start to make once everything's ready to go and you know assemble the Avengers as I like to think about it. So yeah, yeah, that project is in the works and we're ideally looking to start development and pre-production in 2025.
So as we saw at FilmQuest this year, that is a common aspect where a lot of times, well, I know of that made it this year as features that were previous shorts.
Mm.
So something to
Right.
maybe
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
keep an eye out for. So
Hmm. Yeah,
let's
no,
kind
absolutely. They're in the know.
of so kind of looking at beyond this. I know this is going to be taking up a lot of things, but for you, Juan, what would be like a dream project? Because I mean, here you have basically quite a successful little
Hmm.
short film coming, like you said, right out of film school. But if you could work on
Hmm.
anything that you wanted to, what would be your dream
Hmm.
project?
Um, I mean, I've always been a huge comic book nerd, huge Batman fan. I mean, a lot of my character was sort of inspired and developed by that fictional character. So in my dream world, I would be involved with DC Comics in some sort of respect, at least to give some realness or maybe a different perspective on the Batman character. That is my dream. I came into,
Oops.
you know, in an ideal world, I would somehow be a part of a project like that in the future.
Okay. I'll admit we got a little bit of unstableness there, and I think it's on my end. So I think we'll probably get all your everything for the recording, except I didn't quite hear all of it, but I think we'll be okay. So I
Oh
basically
yeah.
got to take giving your own take on a Batman or DC
Mhm.
scenario uh,
Mhm.
based on everything coming up. So that would be where you'd like to go. So let's kind of flip it backwards. What
Sure.
got you into the wanting to be a filmmaker?
So a little not so known history about me. I used to be in the United States Navy. I was forward deployed station on a mini sort of aircraft carrier off of the coast of Japan. And there was a fateful night where I was out on the flight deck doing my job. It was about 30 degrees. It was raining. We were in the South China Sea, and I looked inside flight deck control and I saw my supervisor, who was supposed to be helping us, just with his boots up, drinking a hot coffee, watching a movie. And I was like, this isn't fucking it for me, man. Like this is not where my talents are best suited. And I realized, I'm like, you know what? I want to one day be the guy responsible for making what this guy watches. And I immediately started making phone calls to different film schools in Los Angeles. And this was all while I was on deployment. And I set it up so that I would be able to go into film school immediately as soon as my service contract finished. And when I got to the school, they asked me like, "Oh, what track do you want to study?" And my response was like, whichever one has the most responsibility and is probably the hardest to do on your own. And they were like, producing. And I was like, then that's what I'm doing. And I never looked back, everything. I think there's a beauty in just challenging yourself to be able to carve your own path. And I've loved film. I've been a huge fan of so many different movies and genres over the years and inspired by so many of the greats. So I figured why not just get involved and do my part.
Just kind of dive in there. So, what advice would you give someone if they came to you and said, "Hey, I want to be a filmmaker. What should I do?"
Figure out why. Figure out why you want to do it, because there's going to be a lot of moments, even when you are in film school, where you're going to probably question why you're doing it, your passion, your integrity, your character, they're going to be tested. And if you don't have a strong why, you'll probably go back to your safety net. For me, the Navy was my safety net. And I just had a powerful enough why to be like, I'm never going back to that life. Guaranteed paycheck, don't care about it. Guaranteed food and roof, don't care about it. I want to be free to write my own ticket in life. And I think that when you want that, only a very powerful why is going to get you through the toughest moments.
And they will be there as any creative talent understands. Um, so yeah, that's I
Absolutely.
like that really a lot because I've been there myself as a reviewer and a writer and an author and yep, moving into different things. So thank you very much for all that. So one final thing I just need to ask Juan, how can people follow you, find you on social media, or find your film or where you guys are making it?
Yeah. If you guys go to level11films.com, the 11 is actually the number. You guys can keep we're constantly posting updates on there about, film festivals that we've gotten into. You can request a private screener. You can find me on social media at Juan plus Juan is two. Everything is spelled out minus the last number. Um, a little play on words of my name. And yeah, and then you can find David there as well. He's Dave the Film Guy on Instagram, and Kelly Tappan is, I think, just it's Kelly Tappan. And you can find her on Instagram there as well. And yeah, feel free to reach out. Whether you love or hate the film or love or hate me, I like to hear all of it. And so yeah, we're pretty approachable people, and I'm always open to talking to filmmakers that feel inspired to go to the next level.
Okay. So just letting everybody know again, this is Juan Herrera with us talking about Universe 25, a nice little short sci-fi, philosophical sci-fi is the way I kind of play it out when I was talking to people. And I would recommend this film for anybody that likes philosophical sci-fi. The ones that will make you think, kind of like you said, want to go back and watch it another time, going, wait a minute, let me check to see where that was first introduced because there are some great little elements in this film. Really fun stuff. So I want to thank everybody for joining us here at Guildmaster Gaming. If you like this, please throw a like up on it and share it out to those friends that you have that you think would really like it. And to help us kind of build what we're doing, helping creative talents, please subscribe. And that allows me to do more with all of this. Again, Juan, thank you for joining us. But I'm going to ask you, is there any final things you would like to tell anybody? Or like I kind of pitch out, this is your time to give your Oscar acceptance speech if you want to give it a rollout.
Um, Last thing I'll say is don't forget where you came from. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good you get, how successful you become. Remember the people and the experiences and the mentors and the teachers and the friends who helped you get there because you're standing on all their backs. And that's it.
All right. Thank you again, everyone. Until next time, we'll talk soon.